She's a communication and strategy expert who helps individuals and businesses gain clarity in how they show up. She has worked with professionals and teams to refine their messaging, strengthen their presence, and communicate more effectively. Please let's warmly welcome Tolagbe Martins. Good evening, ma'am. Welcome. We're very excited to have you.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. How are you today?
Very fine, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Minslayer's team. Um, I'm going to share my screen. I do have some talking points, if that's okay. So just bear with me whilst I pull those up. I really enjoyed Elena's presentation, I should just say, because it actually ties very closely to some of what I'll be talking about today. And it's about the fact that you need to build the world first. I love the quiz that Tosi just shared with us because it actually demonstrated very clearly what it means when a brand, you can see four images from a brand and understand immediately which brand it is. And it's because they've been able to create that world. And I would argue that a lot of African fashion brands lose before they launch because they haven't built that world. So we'll be going in today about what it means to build that world. Because before you work with influencers, when you are very clear on the world, you'll know which influencers to use. Before you spend money on advertising and target anyone, you'll know exactly who to target and why, because you've built your world. So let's get into it. So obviously, I don't know exactly who's on the call, but the question that I want you to think about is how many of you have ever tried to explain your brand and then felt like the words didn't actually do your brand justice? I'd like you to sit with that for a little bit. And if this was a longer engagement, I might actually ask some of you to tell me when you've struggled, especially, oh, so I'm trying to do this brand and it's for this type of customer and this is my target audience and this is, and you find yourself almost rambling because between your passion, what you're trying to demonstrate, somehow the story is not coherent. So this was my bio, which we've kind of addressed. We can just skip right through. So when you're building this world, it's one of the reasons why people will argue that you need a grand opening. And in today's world, a grand opening doesn't necessarily mean it's a brick and mortar grand opening. It might even be a virtual event. I mean, we're all here today from all over the world in a virtual event. But the point is, you need a grand opening. You need a major event that launches the business, that creates the brand awareness, that builds excitement and attracts loyalty. And I'll clarify, it may not be at the beginning. It may be after some traction. But at some point, there needs to be an introduction, a launch. And these strategies will help you build loyalty and drive sales. So the problem is that it's not even you that's the problem. It's a sequencing problem because you started with the product. I make beautiful suits. I make beautiful skirts. I use upcycled ashoke, whatever. But you can't explain it. Or rather, the product cannot explain itself. What do I mean by that? You see, there is no shortage of beautiful things in this world. We're just short of money. We're not short of finding beautiful things to buy. The challenge is that people don't choose products in and of themselves. They choose belonging. They choose a brand whose world they want to live inside. They choose a brand that aligns with the image they have of themselves and or the image they want to present to the world. So again, the global fashion market is not short of beautiful things. What it is always going to need, though, is meaning. And that's where you come in when you talk about how to position your brand and how to tell the story about your brand. Your brand story must have a meaning. It must sit somewhere in the creative world. So let's actually look at that in a very practical way. So because I'm a very practical person, let's specify. We're talking about the same product. We make luxury ready-to-wear using hand-woven Nigerian fabric. I mean, if I asked you to in the chat box, you could probably come up with 10 brands that do this easily, because Ashoke, Akwete, even some forms of cotton, all hand-woven, all Nigerian, and everybody uses the word luxury. So it's very easy to do that. Versus, we exist for the woman who has arrived and knows it. Everything we do and everything we make is for her. Same product, completely different gravitational pull. And the point of view is what creates a preference, and the product just confirms that preference. So, what do I see happening over and over and over again when it comes to this squandered opportunity? And what is the opportunity? The lack of a coherent story behind a brand. The first is heritage without meaning. We celebrate African culture. That's not a world, it's a category. The question is actually, what specifically do you believe and who are you inviting in? I could give you specific examples of brands, very successful ones, who have done this. They've created a world and then they've invited you in. Another pattern that we see, an inconsistent voice across touch points. And this is often where I find my work having to do a lot of this training. So I would say number 2 is my entry into the fashion world and how I support the fashion world. A brand might look premium on their website, sound casual in their DMs, and be really weird in their brick and mortar store. The world image, it's almost like it's flickering. Think of something that's not clear. It's inconsistent. It's collapsing at the edges. And that's where customers are watching. That's where they find their friction. And that's where they see the divergence between what you're saying and what you're doing. And that's when it becomes a problem. The third pattern is content versus narrative. Posting consistently is not the same as communicating a world. Content fills a feed. Some people post 3 times a week like clockwork. There are no comments, there are no likes, there's no engagement, nothing is resonating. Whereas narrative builds a brand. And that is really why Elena was talking about telling stories, talking to the camera, showing BTS, isn't that what we're called today? Behind the scenes in a way that is authentic and consistent to the work that you do. So what can we do next? Because as I said, this is intended to be very practical and to leave you with things that you can start tomorrow. That's always my goal. So the first is that I need you to do some work. Define the world of your brand in one paragraph. It's not your mission statement, it's not your values, it's a paragraph. Who is this brand for? What do they believe? What does belonging here feel like? If you can't write this, then you haven't decided. And if you haven't decided, your customer can't either. Audit your touch points as a stranger. Go through your DMs, read your packaging copy, listen to how your team describes your brand. Does it sound like the same world? Again, this is where I do a lot of my work. We have a resource kit where people actually spend time with their teams to identify what are they really selling. Because if you think you sell agbadas or boo-boos, you are part of the problem. That's not what you're selling. So you have to identify what it is that we're really selling. Because consistency is what leads to coherence. I'll also say that the only person bored of your message is you. You have to say it way more than you think, way more than you realize. The third thing is that you should let your product be the proof. There's too much talking, not enough showing and doing. Lead with your point of view. Let your customer arrive at your product already convinced. We talk about a cycle. We talk about the pre-sale, we talk about the sale, we talk about the after sale. All those form part of your customer journey. A lot of customers will spend more time than you realize at the pre-sale, waiting for the impetus. And that's where obviously technology comes in. Thanks to cookies, thanks to data, you can identify and try to nudge them along that cycle. The brands that will last are the ones that built a world first and then invited people in. I would urge you to start there. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you very much, Tolagbe. That was absolutely phenomenal and very, very insightful. Very insightful. I don't think any of us would have looked at, oh, let's create a world first. Most of us lead with products. So that's definitely something to think about. We have a couple of questions for you. And the very first one says, in a world where everyone is creating content, how can brands ensure their storytelling actually resonates deeply rather than just adding to the noise?
So you see, this is where the issue of clarity comes in.
Mm,
If you are very clear about your world, then you know what fits into your world and what doesn't.
mm,
What is authentic to your world and what is not. At which point your storytelling is going to resonate because it's going to speak to the audience that you are crystal clear about. I can actually give an example of this. A brand that, in my opinion, has created a very clear world. I can think of two, but the one that's relevant right now is Dialab, right? Everybody
mm,
understands that Dialab has created a world, and I would argue probably they're one of the more successful examples and visible examples in our space. And it kind of ties into what I said about a launch having actually started. So the Agbadas had already been selling quietly before the launch. And then there was a launch to explain the architecture behind the Agbadas, sketches, so on, the fabric being carefully selected, the Ashoke panels being carefully chosen, the fact that it was small runs, the link, and this was I want to say 2021, the link between the Agbadas and the Japanese Obis. And so it was so interesting last year when they ended up in Japan with a curated collection. You could see fully how the world, and don't forget the world's turn in revolutions. It was so nice to see how that world then almost came back to the beginning.
Mm.
And so that's an example of people who created a world. And so in their world, things are slow. So you order, you wait 3 weeks, or you come for a drop and you book an appointment and you take what is available. That's the world. And you hear some people saying, I don't want to do that. I don't have energy for that. I'm not interested. That's fine. But that's the world. Right?
Mm.
I hope I've answered that question. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
then what would you say makes a brand story truly stick with people? I think I honestly I feel like I just answered it, but is it relatability? Not necessarily. You see this the quest for relatability will send you into bankruptcy. No,
Oh,
you're not
wow.
trying to be relatable.
Mm.
Beyonce is not relatable. Everybody said
Right?
Beyonce has the same 24 hours. Stop it. She's not relatable. Stop it. She's not.
That is true.
Um, relatable, no. Repetition, yes. You have to say things way more than you think. You have to show things way more than you think. The only person that gets bored is you.
Mm.
You have to keep saying things. That's even one thing about content. People put themselves under so much pressure. Repurpose your content, show it again. Clip one part, add a voiceover, show it again.
Mm.
Because guess what? People really aren't thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves and their days. So the algorithm also isn't that favorable. Sometimes the same thing will click. The first time it didn't click, it's going to click another time. If you put it on as we were told, if you have it on Threads, you have it on TikTok, you have it on Instagram, you have it on X if you use it, you have it on wherever. Somebody you put it on. I started. An example. I only started putting stuff on my WhatsApp status last year, and all sorts of people were like, "Oh, so that's what you do? Oh, I didn't know that's." I'm like, really? I thought the whole world was so bored with what I do, but they were not. And if you think about it, WhatsApp status is like people that know you in real life, almost, right? So no, repetition for sure. Emotional depth, yes and no. Look, sometimes a pair of trousers is a pair of trousers. How deep do we want to get about a pair of trousers? This is this meme about how every piece of clothing now has a name. You can't just have a pair of trousers. It must be the Taiwo trousers or the Kende top.
Right.
Come on, like we don't need that necessarily. A well-made pair of trousers is a well-made pair of trousers and makes people's butts look good. Sometimes that's all it needs to do. It's not that deep. I said lasting brands build a world before inviting people in. So the key elements that make people stay and not just visit. Okay. So this is actually what I said about touch points, consistency, reliability, relatability. There's a fashion brand, a European brand called COS, COS. I wouldn't even call it. I don't even know if I should still call them a brand, a fashion brand, but they're a clothing store fashion brand, and they have the same silhouettes all the time, different colors.
Mm.
So the point about this, and another person who does that in Nigeria is Ito Embassy. She has the same silhouettes, different prints all the time. Because people are not that adventurous, guys. You know, if you think about adventurousness on the bell curve, the people on either end are the outliers. The rest of us kind of just want to look okay, and like go through stuff. So when we find something that fits our lifestyles, fits our budgets, we tend to just buy the same thing.
Mm.
If I ask now, how many of you have the same pair of shoes in different colors or the same pair of trousers in different colors? A lot of us here will say yes. Because,
Mm,
hey, if it ain't broke. So
mm,
that is why you have to track your data so you know what people want. And
mm,
I'm not saying you do the same thing over again, but you tweak it and then they give them the same thing they want again. So,
mm,
cost, to my original example, will change the colors based on the season. So, in spring, summer, obviously the colors are much brighter, but then in the winter, the colors are more muted, and then of course they use more knits and more heavy fabrics and so on. In the spring and summer, more linens, cotton, silks. But fundamentally, they've established this is how these people want to look. This slightly oversized, androgynous thing, and they give it to them. This is how we want it. Thank you. Give it to us like that. So the key elements are paying attention, continue to meet expectations, so that you are familiar, not boring, not repetitive, but there's a familiarity to it. And again, the example, the images that we saw that led up to me speaking were very evocative of that. They were actually different pieces, but they were familiar. It's why when you get a new fashion director, they give him or her the archives to go and study because there is a lineage to design and
mm.
branding. And it goes back to one of my key phrases, one of the things I coach about, which is clarity. If you're very clear on the world you're building, if you're very clear on the messaging, you see, it's those people that don't have this clarity, they are the ones that copy, and they are the ones who get confused, that you can't tell their pieces. Yeah, I
Great.
think those were all the
Thank
questions,
you.
right?
Yes, those were all the questions, and that
Yeah,
was absolutely incredible. Thank you very much, Tolagbe. Thank you.
you're
Thank
so
you.
welcome. Thank you very
All
much.
right. All right. Thank you, everyone. What an incredible way for us to kick off day one of Behind the Sleigh. We started off today by understanding the technical sides of ads with Jason Dayton. We moved into the human side with our session on influencer marketing. And now we just wrapped up by seeing exactly how a strong brand identity and positioning allows your brand to be recognized. I want you to take a look at your notes from today. You now have the roadmap for visibility and identity. Tomorrow, we are going from the sleigh to the scale. We're tackling two of the biggest questions in the room, which are how do I fund my fashion brand and how do I scale my operations from local to global? You cannot afford to miss day two. We're talking capital, we're talking structure, we're talking growth. But thank you all for your time today. I am Taiwa Desope, and I'll see you all tomorrow, 5 p.m. West African time. Good night and keep building.